Ladies and gentlemen, to have with us today on Let's Face the Issues, a medical expert, one that I believe we can depend on with truth. He has had the privilege of publishing 2 books about COVID. In fact, one of them's called Sanctioned, The COVID Murders, and then the other's talking about the heroes and the villains in COVID and what had taken place. Ladies and gentlemen, what I call expert, and I don't know if he agrees with my position or not, but what I call the expert on the COVID vaccine, the big pharma lies, and what the nation had been told about the vaccinations, and the Trump administration now saying, no, we're not going to follow that anymore. I am thankful that we have one that can answer our questions, I believe, about these issues. Ladies and gentlemen, we're welcoming today Dr. Sheftall, a heart surgeon, plastic surgeon, MIT graduate, and one that's an author of 2 books examining and exposing the COVID lies. I'm thankful to have Dr. Sheftall with us today. Doctor, thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to what God is going to say through you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Youngblood. My time I've spent with you over the last, let's say, month or so has really been an inspiration. You're an amazing person, and I love it every time I know that the next day I'm going to be coming to speak with you.
Amen. Well, we're delighted to have you, and I don't want to put you on the spot as to the build-up, but let me just ask you if you would, and some people feel a little uncomfortable with this, I'm not asking you to do anything, but give our listeners just a little blurb of your historic background, your reputation, your expertise, and what you've done, and the reason you're at the microphone today.
Well, I'll do my best. Sometimes it's difficult to talk about yourself.
I understand.
You've hit on a lot of it already. I received an undergraduate degree in physics from MIT. And if you notice my voice is a little bit rough this morning, it's because, as you know, I've been diagnosed with cancer, and it's in my head and neck. Primarily, it's in my neck, and it's starting to impinge maybe a little bit on my vocal cords. So that's, I apologize for that.
Well, we invite our listeners to continue in prayer for you, for the healing and for what God will do in taking care of that.
Yeah, I just wanted to apologize for the gruffy voice, because I kind of talk like this anyway, you know. But anyway, so I did my undergraduate at MIT in physics, and then I taught physics for 1 year at USC out in California, and then I started medical school, and that was done at the University of South Florida, down in Tampa, Florida. And from that point, it was a matter of doing general surgery first, then plastic surgery, and then after about, let's see, 21 years of plastic surgery, which I continued on after that 21 years, I just added pediatric cardiac surgery to it. Because in the charity that I had started, called Operation Kids, we had children coming in barefooted with congenital heart anomalies and no one to do the surgery. So I went ahead back to training and got the training necessary to be able to do that safely. And I did it for about 10 years until I retired this year.
Well, I'm thankful for you and for your expertise. Take a moment before we get any further into the subject matter today. Tell me about, and our listeners, about your 2 books. One of them is entitled Sanctioned, The COVID Murders. Why is it called that, and why is it important for an individual that's interested and concerned to go online and find our website, conservative.edu, scroll down to the bookstore, and you'll find this high profile. So tell us about the book Sanctioned, The COVID Murders, and then tell us a little about your book, Heroes and Villains, the COVID-19 Book of List. Tell us about those 2 books.
Okay, you've introduced those 2 books in reverse chronological order. I wrote the Heroes and Villains book first, so let me talk about Sanctioned, The COVID Murders, which is my most recent one now. It's a 2,000-page book, if you can believe it. So I don't ask everyone to read it in one sitting. So I've broken it up into 6 volumes for the readers. And each volume is about 300 or 400 pages long. And it's going to cover everything there is to do with COVID. The first volume, which is already available, as you mentioned, is called Sanctioned, The COVID Murders, Volume 1, A Tale of Two Viruses, which is kind of interesting because viruses themselves do not exist. The reason I have a tale of two viruses is one virus, as we all know, was manufactured and toyed with, experimented with in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Weaponized.
Well, gain-of-function experiments were performed on it.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I must say that there are people in the world, unfortunately, who would like to be able to create a device that they could spread throughout the world for nefarious purposes and hurt people with it. And that's what the experiments were focused on. They failed at it. They weren't able to do it. And they also pretended to discover a virus in the lungs of a 41-year-old Chinese man. A Chinese man who was found at the Hunan seafood wet market. You do remember the wet market theory, don't you?
Yes. It was a lie, but go ahead.
That's correct. It was a lie. It was debunked, that theory. As soon as, and what's sad to me is that as soon as the wet market theory was debunked, that should have been the end of this whole thing.
Right.
But for some reason, people wanted to continue to believe that a novel coronavirus caused all these cases of pneumonia, okay, which they hadn't caused at all. Those pneumonia cases had the same exact symptoms as all the other 2,000 cases in Wuhan hospitals at the time.
Yes.
Atypical pneumonia. Atypical pneumonia just means we know you have pneumonia, we're not sure what's causing it. Okay? The reason I know that the second type of pneumonia there did not exist, and certainly was not caused by a novel coronavirus, was because we proved that the virus did not exist the three ways that are normally used to prove that a virus exists by Dr. Fan Wu, who is the Chinese researcher assigned to the case. And I've gone over those three ways a number of times on our show. And people can certainly go back and listen to my explanation of it, unless you'd like to hear a synopsis right now.
The point is, you cover that in your book.
Yes, and it's covered in the book,
yes.
Most certainly.
Let's take a moment. I believe Greg is on the line. Greg, go with the question or comment, please.
You know, I've got several comments, and I'm not sure what all of you covered. I'm glad the doctor's on with you today. I have things to cover from Jimmy Kimmel and freedom of speech to the vaccine and potential detoxing. On the Kimmel thing, it's amazing how, the entire left is screeching and scrawling and having fits about Jimmy Kimmel being booted. Now, of course, his numbers, Arbitron or whatever you want to call them, Arbitron, that's radio, though, I think. What do they call it in TV? His numbers were horrible. Apparently, in a major demographic, he was only at 129,000 a night. And you have podcasters that are doing that for free. But regardless, he whines about, and the left whines about their free speech being infringed. Well, Jimmy Kimmel and the entire left celebrated, just howled in celebration when Donald Trump's free speech was completely shut down. They howled with excitement when Donald Trump was at risk of being placed in jail and having his entire fortune stripped away from him. So it's amazing how they howl, about losing some free. It's not free speech. You're a hired contractor for a company that's losing money. I think $40 million a year being lost on Jimmy Kimmel. And as free speech goes, 54 or 56 times Facebook squelched my free speech when it comes to this exact topic, this topic of COVID and things alike. And they squelched my free speech at the behest of the government that said anything that touches vaccines, anything that touches VAERS, anything that touches COVID, just shut it down. And, I have a list, by the way. I have a picture of the list of times that they squelched me. They shut me down. They suspended me for 10 days or 30 days or said my range would be limited or whatever the terminology was. But on the issue of the COVID vaccine, has the Ford study hit yet in mass? I think there's supposed to be a documentary on the 3rd. What can you tell us about the Ford study? And then I've got one more comment, not a question.
The Ford study you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, I have a article on that, and I'll touch on that and then see what Dr. Sheftall has to say in relationship to it. Here's the article. Buried vax, unvaxxed study finally sees the light of day, and the results are staggering. In 2016, Dr. Marcus Zevero agreed to do the unthinkable, to test the vaccinated against the unvaccinated. Convinced it would prove vaccines are safe, he vowed to publish the results no matter what. Those results never saw the light of day until now. And here's talking about the one that carried out the study. He did a cross path with health freedom journalists who urged him to take on something of public health and avoided that had been avoided for decades. A study comparing the health outcomes of the vaccinated and unvaccinated children. And the bottom line is, Greg, if I'm not mistaken, it goes on to prove that without a question, here's the end result of it. Vaccinated children were over 4 times more likely to have asthma diagnosed than the unvaccinated. They also had a 6-fold increase in acute and chronic ear infections. Speech disorders were 4.47 times higher in the vaccinated group compared to the unvaccinated. Meanwhile, the unvaccinated cohort showed 0 cases of brain dysfunction, diabetic disabilities and learning, intellectual disabilities, ties, or other psychological disorders. This is devastating. Goes on to say, this study should have been rushed to publication on an emergency basis, but I made a footnote on that. Big Pharma buried the study. So, Dr. Sheftall, what are your thoughts? Is this study correct in your opinion, or what are your thoughts?
Yes, we have plenty of information along those lines from previous studies of vaccines. Now, the thing that's tricky about it is the information comes from VAERS, and only about 1% of side effects are actually reported through VAERS because the process itself is so tedious. Okay?
Yeah.
So just bear that in mind, that you're seeing numbers that are way underreported.
Yes.
And it still wins out, meaning VAERS shows that the number of side effects is much, much greater with the vaccine than it is with not taking it.
Yes.
Much.
That's what this study that Greg is talking about.
Yes.
The study that shows that we have been lied to. That's the bottom line.
We've been lied to. Greg brought up a lot of points there which were very important. But he's absolutely right about the side effects in the children. As a matter of fact, there's a very famous graph that I believe I'll be putting in one of my next volumes that show the Cartesian coordinate system and what happens when you get vaccinated versus not. And when you don't get vaccinated, the number of side effects is almost a horizontal line at 0. And when you do get vaccinated, the line is very high.
Sparks.
Yeah, it's very, very high compared to the unvaccinated line.
Yes.
For just about every childhood disease.
Greg, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that Robert Kennedy now has said that there would be no forced vaccination, no mandated vaccination, and we have those on television, the Marxist media, the Communist News group, the screaming of the left, saying that millions of children are going to die because they're not forced to get a vaccination. Now, Dr. Sheftall, respond to this for me. One of the things that I had to ask you is that true? Right now, a parent can go to the physician and ask the physician, that child can get measles shots, etc., etc., etc. But what the CDC has been saying needs to be, now Robert Kennedy is saying, parents, you don't have to get all of those, 73 shots by the time that child is 17 years old. So do you think kids are going to die as a result of not being forced to get a vaccination, but yet having the privilege to get one if they want to?
Of course not. The thing that bothers me about it is anyone that has that kind of obtuse attitude about vaccines needs to be talked to. And one thing they need to review from their medical school days is the major histocompatibility complex. Because remember, this vaccine is different than all other vaccines that have come before it, because the platform is different. In this vaccine, they are asking our bodies, our cells, to produce the antigen. And whenever a foreign protein is produced in the human body, and certainly the spike protein qualifies as a foreign protein. I'll talk to you more about that if you'd like to in a minute. But whenever a foreign protein is produced in our cells, the class 1 major histocompatibility complex proteins and the CD8 T killer cells work together to destroy that cell. And because the lipid nanoparticle, which is the carrier for the modified RNA vaccine, work together to kill the cell that it's produced, the lipid nanoparticle does not need a receptor to get inside a cell and to kill it and to deliver the messenger RNA, the modified RNA, inside the cell. You don't need a receptor like the H2 receptor you might have remembered from the virus. We're talking about the vaccine now, and there's no receptor required. So this thing is I call it a license to kill.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's absolutely what it is. Because if the doctor that you happen to have doesn't remember the major histocompatibility complex, I strongly suggest that you do not get any vaccines for your children until that is reviewed by your doctor and by you. It was a difficult thing to learn in medical school, and it's still a difficult thing to understand. But it's something you must learn about before you agree to have this injected into your child.
Absolutely. Greg, any other thoughts or comments?
Well, I have a question, and then I'm going to have to go. And, Doctor, I would like to know, because I believe in the next 30, 60, 90 days, the number one search on the Internet will be detox. Detox. Is there a legitimate detox for the adjuvants, aluminum or thimerosal, the mercury agent, knowing that those agents assist these vaccines, and I do air quotes around vaccines because I think a lot of them are no longer vaccines, particularly the COVID vaccines. But regardless, since there's a definitive danger risk associated with penetrating that blood-brain barrier, and these adjuvants doing that, and the caustic nature of aluminum, thimerosal, the mercury that's a component of thimerosal, is there a way to get that out of your body? Is there a way to legitimately detox from aluminum, mercury, thimerosal?
Greg, if you would hold your thought there, we got a forced break for our top of the news hour. So if you would hang in there, Dr. Sheftall will answer that right after the news. Ladies and gentlemen, hang in there. Don't turn your dials. We'll be right back right after the news.